What's going on, everybody? Gentleman94 here, back with another episode of Ben Builds P-36A by Academy. This is build day number 3, and let's take a quick look at what we've done so far on this kit. So we have our cockpit spray painted and lightly assembled with a little bit of detail. We've got our engine assembled. We have our instrument panel drilled out and painted, and we have our fuselage halves that have been painted on the inside of the cockpit. We also spent a good deal of our time working on the wings and scratch building the wheel wells. We removed the old, put in these by scratch building with some styrene, and we are looking good. Next step, we're going to start assembling some of this stuff. So today I think we're going to start off with the wings. I want to do a little bit of work on the engine as well, and we might want to do a little detail painting and do a quick oil wash for some of the interiors, because that natural metal, that needs a little bit of contrast. So let's get on. So none of these wings are glued together. I just taped them so I could work on some fit. I wanted to make sure that the wings fit on top of the wheel wells that I scratch built. So my glue of choice is the Tamiya brand extra thin cement. I like how it flows. It's got a wonderful capillary effect. It's just really good glue. It's very popular too, because I just went to my local hobby store to pick up a new bottle and they were out. And they would be out for a couple of weeks. So a little unfortunate. But with these wings, we might need a little bit stronger glue. And there's a couple of different glues that I do like using. One, of course, being Tamiya. I also enjoy using plastic welder. And there's only 2 locating pins on this wing, so we might want to run some plastic welder along the leading edge, the wingtip, and the trailing edge of the wing. It might not be a bad idea. There's lots of different types of plastic welders out there. I've used a bunch of different ones. I have this one right now, and it's been working just fine. I've also used 10X7R and stuff like that too, so it's kind of up to your personal preference. One thing I do like doing though is I like to go ahead and kind of clean up the parts before I put them on. Freshen up the area, make sure that the glue is really going to start adhering to these different locating areas, and I'd like to have both sides pretty good, pretty clean, ready for the glue to really take effect. And these wings are not horrible. They're fairly clean, but there's a little bit of some roughness to them, so I want to take that down and smooth it out. And I'm going to use a combination on this side of both Tamiya and my plastic welder. And first thing, let's crack this open here. I'm going to put a few dots of Tamiya here on this locating pin and on this locating pin, and that's all there is. So let's just kind of put this on and see if there's much contact. There's not a whole lot of contact on those locating pins. So I think the majority of the gluing factor is going to come from the leading edge, trailing edge, and the wing tip. Oh, I'm going to go with the plastic welder. That's just, I think, a better idea. I'll just slide this in between the wings, and that should be good. I'll work my way around, kind of just gluing all the sections down. Keep in mind that with any sort of plastic welder, it's a hotter liquid, so it will definitely melt plastic, and it melts it very quickly. So if you have very thin parts, maybe don't use plastic welder. Maybe stick with the extra thin cement, because you don't want to distort and ruin the parts that you have. Also, there's some areas here right around the landing gear bulge here on the wings that need to be attended to. Also, the panel lines for the guns that obviously we're not installing because we're building an A, not a C or a Mohawk. Those have to be filled. And I've got some super glue that I picked up at the 99-cent store that will work temporarily. I'd like to go ahead and get some nicer super glue, but this is going to work just fine. So we'll get to that, but first I wanted to kind of put the wings together, see how the panel lines line up, see what I can do to go ahead and clean up everything and get it squared away for the next, stage of the build. Pretty much I'm just going to run some plastic welder along the trailing edges, leading edges, any opening that I might see, and I'm going to press those parts together. It's going to give me a nice kind of ooze of plastic that will let me know that, yeah, this glue is working and these parts are going to be stuck together, hopefully forever. So I'm still a little bit leery on how the fit will be for the fuselage of the wings, but we'll find out when we get to that. So I'm going to toss the other side on, and we'll be right back, and I'll show you what I come up with. All right, guys, we are back, and I've put the other wing on. I'm just running a little bit of plastic welder around the seams, and for the most part, the wing looks good. I don't have a problem with the way it looks. It does require a bit of work, though, along the leading edge. There's actually a large chunk of plastic that's missing on the front of this wing, so I need to go ahead and fill that, and I'm probably going to use a little bit of super glue for that. Super glue is great for panel lines. It's great for gap filling because it dries super hard, and you can sand it down, and then you can polish it out, and you can prime it, and then you can paint over it. Things like, I don't know, Gunzy, it works well too, or Squadron Putty works well, but they can sometimes crack. And with super glue, it's not going anywhere. So it's great for that type of application. Not so good for attaching plastic to plastic, though. You want to go ahead and get a nice model glue for that. Now here in the cockpit area, make a nice little oil wash for this, and I've got my spare mixing jar here. Now I'm going to use some very cheap Testors oil-based paints. I've got rubber and I've got flat black, and I'm going to use a little mixture of these with some paint thinner to make an oil wash. And all that's going to do is help to kind of bring down the shine of the cockpit and give a little definition to the interiors, such as panel lines, any instrument panels, any sort of levers, or stringers, or anything that's molded into the side. It's going to go ahead and help to pop those details. And I'm going to mix this up. The rubber seems to be decent. These are old paints too, guys. I've had these for a long time, but I really only use them for this exact purpose. I don't really paint a lot with oils. I like making oil washes, but I don't like painting with oil-based paints. I like painting with acrylics. They just dry faster. They don't feel as toxic to me, and the smell dissipates a lot faster. So just a little bit of rubber color in there, a few drops of paint thinner, and let's mix it up and see what we come up with. And I want to put a few drops of the flat black in there as well. I think that'll give it a nice dingy, grungy look, and that's going to be decent for this inside of the cockpit. All right, so this paint is a little drier than the rubber, but that's okay. We'll have enough paint thinner on our sprue here that we should be able to activate it. And let's see, just take a few drops here, kind of mix this up. One drop there. Let's get one more drop. There we go. All right, I'm just mix this up and close up my paints, of course. Always try to close your paints up, guys. It just helps. That way you don't spill them, they don't dry out prematurely, and you don't have to buy new paints all the time. So I'm going to mix this up, and then we're going to go ahead and kind of slather it on the different areas. So I plan on hitting the fuselage, sidewalls, the cockpit, both the floor and the seat, the bulkhead and all that, and also the engine. I want to hit the engine with some of this wash as well. And the engine's going to get a little bit more detail, but for right now, it'll be a good base, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and let this kind of settle a little bit, mix it up a bit more. And before I go too far with this, I wanted to also paint up some of the detail parts on the inside. And with that, I'm just going to use some basic flat black by Tamiya. And let's go ahead and get our brush pack out here. And let's see. We're also going to need some thinner. So I'm going to pour some 70% isopropyl into a little mixing cup here. And that'll be my brush cleaner. And let's see, let's find a brush. You need a decent brush, something kind of a smaller size brush with a nice point to it. All right, so I'm just going to take each side of the fuselage, and I'm just going to, pick out different parts and pieces that I think should be black. And I've got my references opened next to me, somewhat off camera there, so I have a good idea of what should be painted black and what shouldn't. The problem is that this cockpit is nowhere near being, well, really detailed, and it's not really correct either. It's a decent approximation of a P-36 cockpit, but it's not really that great. Ideally, if you end up getting this kit and you want it to be really detailed, go out and get yourself a resin replacement kit for it. This could do wonders for the inside of this. But since I don't really want to spend extra cash right now, I'm just going to go with what I have and make the best of it. So I'm just going to pick out a few pieces on both of these fuselage halves that should be black, and we'll be right back once they're dry and ready for a wash. Okay, so both fuselages are dry. We've doctored them up a little bit here with the black, and now we're going to come in with our oil wash. Soak in, let it run along the panel lines, run along the interior detailing. Let me show you what it looks like here. You can see with and without. And yeah, without looks very plain. You can't really see much of the detail. But when you slather on some of this oil wash, watch this. It just flows right where you need it to go because it's super thin, and it gives us a nice definition of the different panel lines, instrument panels, fuse boxes, whatever these might be. It really kind of pops them. And that's what we really want. So I'm going to apply maybe 1 or 2 more coats before the night is done on this, but you can kind of get an idea what it looks like. So I'm also going to throw some of this oil wash on the cockpit floor. And we're just going to cover the seats and the floorboards and the control stick and the bulkhead, whatever we got. We're just going to cover it all up with this oil wash. And it's going to help to dull it down. It's going to give it a little bit of difference, a little definition. And that's what we want. We want that. And yeah, I mean, it's okay. It is what it is. It's not a very super detailed part, so it's fine. So moving on, let's go ahead and do the engine as well. And we're just going to drop on each of these cylinder heads, making sure that they kind of get down into the different veins. And we're going to be detailing this up a bit more anyway, but this will at least give us a good base to work from. And then the back cylinder banks as well. Okay, I have glued one of the fuselage halves and the cockpit together, just so we can get an idea of how it looks. And I've also touched up a little bit with a leather pouch on the side. It looks like there was something like that in the actual aircraft, so I painted it with a reddish brown, and that's good enough. So I'm not very impressed with the cockpit. I've said that before, but you know what? Like I said, I don't want to spend any extra money, so it's fine. And together it looks decent. It doesn't look horrible. I've seen way worse. We're going to need to put on some sort of headrest, though, because this does not have a headrest, which is strange because it's a very prominent feature, it would appear. But anyway, let's tackle those panel lines and see where we go. All right, so I just have a regular tube of crazy glue. It's not the best choice for this. We should be really using some different type of CA glue, but this is going to be fine. It was cheap. I have it lying around. Why not? Let's use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace the panel lines that we don't want. I'm going to trace them with this super glue. The nice thing about the super glue is it's going to go ahead and fill in the panel lines and allow me to then sand it once it's dry, sand it smooth. And then once it's smooth, I can polish it out, and after I prime it, in theory, you won't see a thing, which is really what I'm going for here. And like I said, we're not building the C or the Mohawk, we're building the A. So these shouldn't even be here, I'm pretty sure. Now, while the wing is drying, again, let's take a look at the engine. Now, the engine itself that comes out of the kit is not very detailed. It's missing, plug wires, and it's missing detail that you just don't have in this. So a resin replacement engine would probably be a better idea. But again, I don't want to spend extra cash on this kit. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to scratch build a few of the little missing pieces and parts. So we can see that, yeah, we're missing some of the detail. And it may not be that obvious, from the side because you won't see a whole lot of it. But if you look directly from the front of the aircraft, you're going to notice that the engine needs a little bit of work. So close up of the engine, we're going to get these push rods here. We're going to paint those black per my instructions in the references. But we're missing the wires that are coming out and that are kind of threading themselves in through the cylinder banks. So we need to add those. You can see them here. They're usually a pair of 2 wires, and it looks like they're between each of the cylinder banks and in front of each of them as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to place wires. Now, I've got some fuse wires, so we're going to go ahead and run with those, and I've got some that are, I think, perfect color. So I'm going to get on that, and we'll see what comes up. Okay, guys, we're back, and as you can see, we have wired up this thing, and it doesn't look too bad. I used super glue, and I used some very thin copper wire that I had lying around. I mean, this is really, really thin wire, and from a distance, you really can't tell, but close up, it adds a whole lot to that. So I'm pretty pleased about that. I'm going to work a little bit on the instrument panel. I'm not going to be able to do what my plan was originally, which was to use those P40 decals as kind of a back film to that. I'm not going to be able to do that. So we'll work on that a little later. The wings are coming along nicely. That CA glue is drying up nicely, and we're just going to have to wait and be patient. So yeah, this model's coming together. We're going to have to go ahead and mount the instrument panel and do all that. We want to put some seatbelts in there. So next time we're going to go ahead and take a look at kind of sprucing up the cockpit even more. And of course the cowling, the engine. Hope you enjoyed. We'll be back next time in episode 4, where we're going to really start getting this thing put together. All right. See you soon.